This episode and every episode is sponsored by my company, JDA Software Testing. We're your one-stop shop for manual, automated, performance, and security testing. Check us out at jdaqa.com. And with that, let's get on with the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. My name is Jay Agner. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Sean Moir, even though it's not really how it looks like it's spelled. Sean, welcome to the show, buddy. How are you?
Good, thank you. Doing well. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to
Awesome.
chat.
Yeah, me too, man. We were talking a little bit beforehand. Very timely call today. I love the concept of your app that we'll get into in a little bit. Heyday, but let's start with your background. Where'd you come from? Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to college? That sort of thing.
Sure. Grew up not far from where I am now, in Media, PA. Went to high school here. I went to University of Delaware for college. Actually started in my major was electrical engineering. I was not good at it, but I had to take computer science classes as part of that curriculum. And even in high school, I'd never taken a computer programming course. So that was my first exposure to it, and
Mm-hmm.
found out I love this. I'm way better at it than I am electrical engineering. So made switched my major there, and just I've kind of continued my journey through that.
Awesome.
Um, and then I guess out of college, first job was e-money advisor. They had recruiter reached out, had said, "Hey, there's some UD alumni that are working here that you could go talk to at a career fair," and just kind of really enjoyed that and liked that it was still kind of Philadelphia area startup type deal. And yeah, I feel like I'm going on here. If you want to
No,
dive
this
in
is what
any.
it's about. I want to hear. I am curious how. What did you want to do with your electrical engineering degree initially? What was your kind of initial plan there?
I really had no idea. I knew that I was okay at math and kind of like that, and that just I don't know, that sounded like a major that I might enjoy,
I mean,
and I
that's
was wrong.
fair. That's fair. I think that's how a lot of people start. That's why I asked because I have 5 kids, and I know that my oldest is about to embark on that whole journey, and it's a really weird thing to try to figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life when you're like
Yep.
18 years old. So I was curious if you had something lined up, or did anybody in your family did they do electrical engineering, or was it you were kind of just you were going
Nope.
off and doing it? Wow.
Yep.
Okay. Um, so you made the pivot. You decided you were going to do computer science. Now, did you? And I probably already forgot. Did you switch? Did you switch majors during school, and then you went after computer science? Is that what you said?
Yeah, after the first year, so I got lucky that the curriculums for electrical engineering and computer science were almost identical for the first
Mm-hmm.
year. So I was able to switch, and I didn't have to take any extra classes or anything. It was just from that point onward, I was more focused on computer science over the next set of whatever the engineering classes were going to be.
Okay. Um, so you graduated, you got your comp sci, and then I saw some data engineering and stuff. But walk me through a little bit of kind of you left college, you felt the real world slap you in the face probably as most people do. Um, how did you kind of walk through your first few jobs? Like what was the path there?
Yeah, so um, starting out at eMoney, I didn't really know where they were going to put me or really what I was most interested in. I mean, there was really kind of two paths at eMoney you could take. One was more of the building the actual software application they built for financial advisors. Um, Another side was really this like data aggregation space. In order for financial advisors to work effectively with other clients, they need a lot of financial data. And eMoney had an in-house system for basically aggregating everyone's account information from all the banks that they use into the
Mm-hmm.
system so that could power um, the platform. And that data side is the side they put me on, and I was like, sure, I'm just happy to have a job and do whatever. And it worked out that eMoney was the perfect size that they had a really good support system for these entry level roles that I was coming into, but it was also small enough that I could understand and feel the impact that I was making.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just Like I feel like I got lucky in a lot of these ways in landing in that spot, having kind of a number of mentors there that were help teach me, kind of learn the best practices, and then I just through that role kind of developed a passion for that data side of things, and working with data, just the various ways to manage it and how we can get value out of it.
How big was that company? Like, what was the company size?
I think they were. I could be wrong. I think it was about 250 people when I
Okay,
started, and maybe like 700 when I left.
that's I mean, it's still a I would say that speaks a lot to good culture if they can foster, those new hires at 250
Hmm.
people, because that's when you start to see that break down a little bit, and like people just start to bring in contractors, and they're just like, we need bodies. But the fact that they had a
Hmm.
good mentorship, kind of process there, with the people there, um, did those relationships kind of go on after you left there? Do you still talk to some of the folks in there today?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
The tech lead on my team, and we still meet every other week. We've actually ended up. I recruited him to a later company, the
that's how
CTO
it
and
works,
things.
by the way.
We've
That is
hopped
100%
around at
how
the
it
same
works.
places. Yeah.
Very
Uh,
cool. So you left eMoney. When and where did you go?
so I found that as things were growing and as it naturally happens, there's more people involved in projects. Things start to move a little bit slower. I was just wanting kind of more learning opportunity than I was kind of finding. And the so right when I started at eMoney, they had just gotten acquired by Fidelity, and so the CTO at that time ended up leaving. I think that probably not too long after that acquisition, and he went to this company, health tech machine learning startup in the city, called Pickwell. And so he had reached out to me and got to talking, and I ended up kind of reuniting with him over there at Pickwell, to do more, to really bring some of that, I guess, data infrastructure expertise that we had acquired at eMoney, to their systems there. And I mean, I can dive into some of the fun challenges we were able to solve and all
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah.
Um, so Pickwell's technology itself was incredibly fascinating. It, we basically had a pool of like anonymized medical claim data, and with just a little bit of stuff, the system would be able to predict what your healthcare costs would be for the year
Mm-hmm.
and simulate that through like all the available insurance plans that you were eligible for, and tell you with pretty high confidence like this is the one that's going to save you the most money.
Right.
Really cool tech. What we wanted to be able to do is tell a better story, I think, for the clients that we work with around that data. And we didn't really have the data infrastructure in place to do that. So a lot of my work was kind of taking the predictions from the service, the output of that, aggregating that together with other data, and making it all available in real time to show kind of the benefit, how everything was working, and all of that. So really, this like a little bit more behind the scenes real time analytics, but then we
Mm-hmm.
ended up building some client reporting on top of that was pretty neat.
So you dove in pretty quick. I mean, the data stuff is cool, and it's how. Let's fast forward a little bit, and then we'll back up a little bit. Do you think all that exposure to data architecture early on kind of helped you where you ended up today with your
Yep,
application and being able to kind of spin stuff up pretty quickly and deal with the data the way you deal with it today?
yep.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have been able to build Heydai even in its current state without an understanding of those practices and how to model that based on kind of the outcomes I'm trying to achieve and make it expandable and all that. For
Right.
sure.
Um, all right. So how long did you stay at Pickwell?
That was about a year and a half, I think. And so from there, so the CTO Pickwell ended up leaving and going to a company, startup in Westchester, in the ed tech space called Score, and ended up eventually kind of joining over there as well to play a similar role, but Pickwell is around, I guess, 20 or so people. And I think the biggest limitation there was just, very, very strong team, but limited, I guess, career growth opportunity at that point,
Mm-hmm.
with where they were at. And so there's more of that at Score, but to do, similar kind of work, similar kind of needs. We had just experienced kind of the benefit of building a system like that at Pickwell and wanted to do the same thing at Score.
So none of these places had any really strong non-competes or non-solicits, I guess. Because it
That's
sounds like you got dragged along to all these fun places, from place to place, from employer to employer.
Yeah.
All right. So, how long from there did you start your journey and to start the wheels turning to build your own application?
Uh, that's a hard question to answer because I built even an early version of this with a friend in college. So it's been a long time.
Okay. All right.
I've had a couple iterations of it that it's mostly been as like um, a side project to just play around with new technologies and learn new things to see if there's anything that I can learn there that I could apply to my job at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't take it too seriously. But really, about this time last year, I had a little bit of a tumble down our hardwood staircase. Uh, Ended up being totally fine, but it was more like it was just kind of a wake up call that had me reflecting a lot on like what, it could have been worse. And like, what, why don't I do, there's a lot of things that I would regret in life if that had been worse. And just, like, why don't I do something about that? Like, why don't
I need to hear
I
more about
spend
this
more
tumble.
time?
I need to hear more. So, I mean, not to dig into something that's obviously kind of painful, but it sounds like that was a big catalyst for you. What's the story behind that? Like, tell me a little bit more, as much as you care to share.
I had a pretty routine day. I had just wrapped up a meeting and I went to walk down the stairs and my I had socks on, my legs slipped, and I kind of bounced on my back the whole way down. And we have a baby gate down there because we have three dogs
Mm-hmm.
and they don't come upstairs. And so like I annihilated the baby gate off the wall. My wife was more traumatized because she was sitting on the she like saw the whole thing happen,
Right.
and so she's like traumatized from it. But yeah, I mean, and, like my back was all bruised up and things, but ended up I didn't hit my head or anything, so it's just a lot of pain for a little while. But it was more, it was definitely a catalyst in causing me to reflect on just like there's plenty of things that I say that I want to be doing. Like what keeps me from doing them? Why do I not kind of change? There's plenty of not that there's plenty of time, but there's definitely pockets of time where I just either don't feel up to doing something or don't make it happen. But I think it just caused me to reflect on like why that is and how I could try and do something to make it easier.
Um, that's a really cool, interesting kickoff uh, to doing your own thing. Um, a lot of people, it's a lot less exciting than that. Literally, I mean, yours was like a ride, down the stairs. But like, someone's like, I lost a job, or like, my dog died, or something like. It's not very, exciting. But at least, it was a safe and scary, probably. By the way, do you have flat feet? Because I have flat feet, and
I do have
I
flat feet.
see you do. We got the ski feet, man. Like I always tell my wife, like I've taken that ride a few times, and like I actually am very careful on stairs now when I'm wearing socks because
Yep.
my feet will go flying out like I'm, in the Alps, man. It's not fun having flat feet.
Yep. Yeah. My
Um,
biggest takeaway was always hold the railing going down the stairs. But second
I even
biggest
like
takeaway was
crunch
all
my
this
toes a little
reflection.
bit now, man. Like I am like super paranoid about going down steps because I've taken so many, especially the carpeted ones, man. I just go
Yep.
zipping down. Um, all right, so tell me what Heyday is today, and then maybe we can go back to college and tell me how it started. So what is it today? If I go download it from the App Store, how do you pitch it?
Uh, so I pitch it as like an AI daily planner for your life outside of work. I'm not really aiming to have it be a productivity tool, but more how to to be aware of how you're spending your time and how to kind of change that narrative to what you want to be. If spending time with family or reading books are the things you want to be spending more time during your week, how to fit that in and really follow through with making time for it.
And is the way that the main way is to provide that easy tracking and then some kind of visibility on how you're spending your time?
Yep. So the kind of flow of the app is in the morning. It walks you through a plan for your day. So it kind of shows your calendar. It'll give recommendations for kind of the things that you need to get done, the tasks that you have set up, but then the things that you want to be spending more time. And you can play around with those, change the recommendations if you want. And then you set that plan for the day and you get this visual timeline, similar to calendar, but everything just kind of in there together. Um, and Heyday tracks your time as you go throughout the day and gives you this kind of nice review at the end to show here's where your time went, kind of thing. So all of that is the aspect that when I say I'm still kind of embarrassed by its early state. I don't know how useful this review is at the moment. There's a lot more that I want to do in telling a narrative about your day and include like sleep data from Apple Health and tell the story around how all those things affect each other, and especially over time and how that compares to your other days.
I mean, when you said it before we started, that you were embarrassed by the state of it, I was shocked. It's a very slick, very cool application, and you're a very small percentage of a small percentage of a small percentage of anybody who's even produced something like that. So I think you should be proud of the current state of it. But let's talk a little bit about where did it start, and kind of you mentioned picking at it, as you went through your career and kind of added stuff. Where did this come from originally? Like, where in college, like how did you come up with it?
It started as in college trying to balance multiple pretty large projects that you need to get done by certain dates. And we really wanted a system that could just tell us how much time per day do we need to spend on these things.
Mm-hmm.
And really just to figure out, and not just like, okay, this is 8 hours, so divided by that, but based on like our trends of how we're making progress to have kind of a predictive nature and be pretty accurate in saying this is what we need to do to keep up. Um, so that's still that concept. It's obviously different from than it was back then, but that concept is still at the core of what Heyday does in trying to predict how likely all of your things are to get done by when you want, whether it's a goal that you have at the end of the week or whether it's some specific deadline. And it uses that prediction to fill in those recommendations when you're planning your day and to raise that awareness to help you prioritize better. If you know something's not going to get done on time ahead of a week in advance, then you can kind of shift your priorities and really think about what is the most important. Time doesn't change; that's limited, but we can still choose how we prioritize it.
Were
So
you
that's kind of what.
surprised by the amount of time you spent doing certain things after you started tracking them?
Yes,
What was the biggest? What were
and
the biggest things that you were kind of surprised with?
um, probably the biggest thing is when we're watching TV shows or something, and just not understanding, even when the show ends and we're kind of hanging out, just sitting on the couch, like the amount of time that passes is longer than I perceive it to be. Uh, I've, it's been interesting just learning how skewed my perspective of time is at depending on kind of whatever's going on.
And do you, I mean, using Heyday or any other method, I mean, would you say that whether it's time or anything else, the only way to really kind of get a handle on any of that stuff is to track it, right? I mean, you don't you like you said, you're so biased because you live it, and it's I think having some method of tracking it, um, is huge. And that's all the successful people
Yeah.
say, it's track it, track your day, track your time, track your food, track your workouts, track your whatever. And it's very daunting to do that. How have you tried to tackle that problem with Heyday? How have you tried to make it easier for somebody to kind of stay on top of doing it consistently? Because anybody can do it for a day or a few days, but like doing it for weeks at a time. Like I'm very proud of myself because I'm almost at 365 days of tracking everything I've put in my dumb face and mouth over the last year. So like I'm very close to a full year of like tracking everything there. How have you kind of tackled that problem with Heyday?
So I'm not sure that I've really tackled it yet to the way that I think it needs to. I mean, one aspect is by setting up this kind of recommended plan for your day, it eliminates some of the manual effort of having to put in everything for your day because it's just, hey, here's what it is. You might tweak it a little bit, but then it's set in there. But right now, you still have to go through and check things off as they're done. Um, I think the opportunity where I want to improve it on that is really making as many things automatic as possible. Right, like I can pull in sleep data from Apple Health. I can pull in workout times, and so like stuff can just show up on your timeline in the day tracked without you having to go in and put that in manually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or if data comes in, just being able to label it as certain things. Like if there's a calendar integration, I want to add the ability to just categorize that time super easily without having to like enter in the specific kind of bounds of that.
That's a great that's a great answer and a great point. I think automating as much of that as possible makes it easier to be consistent. You know,
Yeah.
same thing with tracking the food. I use the Lose It app, and like they even have a thing now. The barcode scanner thing's been around for a while. You scan it and it'll find the food and it'll
Yep.
put the macros or whatever in. But now it'll basically read it off the back of a label. So if it has a nutrition label in the back, like it'll pull all the pull everything out of that little table because it's obviously easy to do these days compared to years ago. But um, that's automated, right? Because even like if you're
Yep.
sitting down to track your food, like having to put all that stuff in is just another barrier to being consistent. So I think like you said, automating all those pieces. And there's a lot of disparate pieces in a day-to-day life, right? Especially like people who do a lot. I do a million different things. So like, yes, tracking my workouts are great because I use Peloton app and I use the Apple Health thing and I use Sleep Time for time and like some of those things. But then there's just like so many different things that you do in a day that aren't trackable. And I think maybe that's where people stumble a little bit, right? So figuring out how to do that, it's pretty cool. I like that. Um,
I
what
think
were, go ahead, go ahead.
so some of those I have actually had. I ended up de-scoping from the MVP that I released, but in this review your day flow, hoping to be able to help fill in some of those pieces that are less intuitive to track by prompting for that at the end of the review. How else did you spend your time today? And provide some suggestions so that it's easy. Oh yeah, I did this. Oh yeah, I did that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of to finish up that summary of your day.
Yeah, no, I like that. And the vampire time, I call it vampire. It just like the stuff that, like you said, the 10 minutes you're sitting at the end of the Netflix screen, or you're sitting there scrolling through something while you're waiting for something else to happen. Those add up pretty quickly throughout the day, much quicker than I
Yep.
think it feels like during the day. Um, so maybe the fall down the stairs is the answer to this, but what are some of the things that did help hold you back initially from kicking off a little more earnest of an effort? I know that's obviously a big catalyst, but what mentally, emotionally, physically, what were the things that like kind of held you back from taking the leap a little bit earlier?
Um, I mean, I think probably two things. One of them is perfectionism. I tend to want something to be confident that something is perfect, that it works, that it's great, and I've had to get comfortable with uh, knowing that there might be an issue, that there might be stuff, and putting it out there anyway to try and iterate and get feedback sooner. So I think there were a couple of times that I iterated on that before this latest attempt, where I ended up not shipping it just because I didn't feel that it was really up to the standard that I wanted in terms of
Mm-hmm.
usefulness. I think a second piece is I tend to hesitate to talk with other people because I feel like I'm going to be a burden on them, and I don't. I've had to get to get over that a lot as an entrepreneur in both talking to customers and networking with other people to get advice on different challenges I'm facing. And that's one I still struggle with today, and I'm trying to move past.
Well, I'm glad you're here then. That's good. That means that you got over it a little bit to say yes to be on here. So I'm sure, that was a little bit of a struggle. So thank you for doing that. But you're a salesman now. You're a salesman for your own app and for your own business and for whatever. And I'm the same way, man. I've said this a bunch of times recently. Like, I read somewhere it was like describe your first, five things you think of when you think of a salesman. And it's like a pest and like annoying and like, whatever. And like you don't want to be that guy, but like at the same time, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, like you have to do that. Like nobody else is gonna sell your stuff for you. Like you can go try to, offload it, to somebody or delegate it off to somebody else. But like to get started, I think you really got to overcome that. So it's cool that you did that. Um, if you had to start all over again, if you had to start Heyday again today, knowing what you know now, what would be your first step?
I would probably start with with a part time job instead of taking the leap full time before having a product launch or anything like that. I don't think that I necessarily went about that the right way, but I saw it as the only way that I could to get it off the ground. But I think looking back, I could have um, made an easier transition, just diving into something part time.
That's interesting. Um, would you relate that kind of conversely to maybe starting it when you still had a full-time job and like doing some of the things that to get it off the ground while you still had full-time employment, after hours or whatever, or would that model have worked for you?
I think that model, I tried that model and it didn't work for me. There was a couple of times where I had reached burnout and I would always put Heyday or whatever I was working on down because full time job was my focus and I wanted to be at, peak capacity for that.
Hmm.
So I knew that I needed to at least be able to focus on it full time for a little bit. Um, but I think that I probably, at least as like a stepping stone, could have instead of just making the full leap right into it.
Interesting.
Sooner.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's that's there's a lot of things to dig into there, but what uh what are three things that you're doing today, mental health wise, emotionally wise, physically wise, um, to keep yourself healthy? To increase your longevity, as one of my friends likes to say, like to keep yourself around for a while. What are some things that are important to you?
Um, I think hiking is a big one. So there's a state park just a few minutes from me, and they have some pretty nice trails to go on. I'm super excited that it's spring now. The weather's getting a little nicer. But I just love it's so different from going for a jog around the neighborhood, like being immersed in kind of nature. Um, it's just like it's a different kind of reflection happening at the same time as I'm going around getting exercise. And that's probably the biggest. It just makes me feel whole as I go through that, both physically trying to stay in shape, but also just mental health wise.
Did you grow up
Uh,
doing that? Or did you spend a lot of time outdoors as a kid?
Not, I mean, I played a few sports and things as a kid, but I didn't really go like hiking around and things
Hmm,
probably until college.
interesting. I was thinking maybe it was a throwback to when you were younger, but it's cool that you found it when you were older, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter when you find the things that you enjoy that keep you healthy. Anything else that's kind of a religion for you?
Um, Probably meditation is a big one. Uh, Not as consistent as I would like to. I mean, I try to meditate every day, but not perfectly consistent with it. And the other big one, more recent, um, having like a fresh fruit smoothie in the morning as kind of a
I
morning
like
routine.
that.
Really uh, stepping away. Like today, I haven't had coffee today. It kind of felt like a more sustainable source of energy to kind of kickstart the day and things. And
God bless you,
I've
man.
been enjoying that.
God bless you. I don't know. I try. I tried to. I actually tried measuring, like, because I never know when I'm making coffee in the drip, like, how much I'm actually supposed to put in there, because like it's the dumbest conversion ever. They're like 2 tablespoons per cup. Like, I don't even know what. I don't know what the ratio here is. So then I tried to really do it, and then I realized I overdid it, and then I think I got more addicted to coffee because I was putting more in than I was. So I am like definitely on the side of I'd love to do less coffee and caffeine. It definitely feels like there's a crash at some point during the day. Um, I skipped one earlier, but I'll go back to it because I am curious. What makes Heyday like? What's and I kind of hesitate to use the word niche, but like, what makes Heyday stand out from a productivity app or from some of the other apps? Like, why would people use Heyday? Like, what's its big draw? What's its main differentiator?
Um, so I need to improve the marketing around this, but I think that it's not a productivity app. Right? It's more about um, helping you, giving you the data to better prioritize your time. But it's not about trying to get everything done. It's trying to get the right things done and the things that really matter to you in life, over just trying to check all the things off of a list.
What would you call that as opposed to productivity? I'm curious. Like, what are you kind of thinking of pitching that as?
It's kind of hard. Mindful time management. I don't know.
Mindful time management. I like that. I like that. That's cool. It certainly takes the edge off of the word productivity, because you definitely, like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, you try to cram everything you possibly can in when you hear the word productivity or lack of productivity. Like, I'm not being
Mm-hmm.
productive enough, so I need to do more in less time. Very interesting. Um, all right. So, mystery question time. My favorite time of the day. I still need a sounder for this. But what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? It could be anything: physically, mentally, emotionally, altruistically, selfishly. What is something you would do if you knew you couldn't fail?
There's a lot of answers to that question,
I mean, I've got
but just
time,
to pick
brother.
one, um, just pick one. I guess the one coming top of mind is I would build a nuclear fusion reactor. Solve that problem. I am not the
Wow.
person to do that. I got a D in physics too, and at Delaware, I am not the person to do that. But if I
Doesn't
knew I
matter.
couldn't fail,
Doesn't matter.
uh,
I said you couldn't fail. So, wow, that's a good one. I mean, talk about. I mean, they keep saying every time they put stories out, they make it sound like it's done, but it's like then they're like, just kidding, like it's not really happening. Like we think we got
yeah,
closer, but it's not really there. Why would you pick that one? I'm just curious. Why is that your number? I mean, obviously there's a bunch, but why would you pick that one?
yeah. I mean, it's hard to choose because there's so many problems in the world. But I think if we don't solve energy in a sustainable way, then you know all future generations die. So
That's
um,
a fair point. I thought you were gonna pick hiking Mount Everest. Since you're a hiker, I thought you were gonna go with like
no,
Kilimanjaro or
I'm
something.
an amateur hiker. I'm not
Ah, all right. Well,
I'm
then, I
not at that
mean,
level.
whatever. That's how they all start, I guess. All right, let's wrap it there, dude. This was great. I love learning more about you. Where can we get Heyday if we want to check it out? Is it iOS, Apple? I mean, Android? What are the platforms?
Just iOS right now. It's in the App Store. There will be an Android version eventually. It's built with React Native, so it's easy enough to port, but not there yet.
And it's Heydai, right?
Yep.
All right.
The normal
So
spelling was taken in a million different ways, and it's an AI app, so I got over my
I
one
like it.
incident
I like it.
because it
You know,
misspelled.
you almost can't mess it up. You know, like if you just say it, like it comes out right. So at first I read it and I was like, what is that? And then I said it and I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Hey, dude, that makes a lot of sense. So, um, awesome, dude. Well, thank you for giving me some of your very valuable time today. Keep at it.
Yeah,
You know,
likewise.
I think you did a great job so far, and I think I'm excited to see what you do with it next. So, other than that, man, it's been great, and we'll talk soon. All right.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Sean. See you, buddy. Later.
Thank you. See you.